Hello there, everybody. It's Octavian here. I've got another episode in 100 casts for you. This is going to be number 53, and it's been a little while. I think maybe a week or so since the last episode. They are getting fewer and farther between, and I am very apologetic for that. Lots of busy things happening in my life. I just started working a second job, actually, and I've been doing some work with the CSL recently as well. That's very exciting. If you've been following me on Twitter, then you would know. If you haven't been, then maybe you should follow me on Twitter. There's going to be a link in the description. There's always a link in the description. But hey, let's get into the game proper here. This is going to be a ranked 5s game. It was played, I believe, around the plat level on the Oceanic server, though I very well might be wrong, and somebody might correct me in the description or in the comment section if I am incorrect. But it looks like Team 4-Leaf A, which is the blue team right here, 4LA in there monikers, are going to be sitting in the river S5, looking to maybe get some sort of catch in the jungle, trying to catch somebody out. They've got a pretty decent level 1 team. Cho'Gath is quite nice if he can land that Rupture, especially onto multiple members of the enemy team, and Thresh always has nice catch potential, especially if he chooses to level Death Sentence first, but Flay can be valuable as well, especially as a follow-up CC. I actually like Flay better level 1, especially for the level 1 fights, if somebody else in your team has a good initiation CC. So if for some reason you have somebody like Cho'Gath on your team who can land a good Rupture, start the CC chain up, and then you can get in range for the Flay and pull him back, because then it also adds the extra damage on that auto attack, and it can hit more than one person. So just my little 2 cents there in the level 1 Thresh play, but it looks like they are going to be going through with the invade. The Gromp is where Helen is starting in the jungle here, and it's going to be stolen away. Very clean, very nicely played by the sides of 4-Leaf A, and it looks like I'm going to swap right over to the blue buff as well. This might be overstaying a little bit, but up in the top lane, ZoMG, a cat, and his friendly Braum are going to be getting a little bit of an advantage in that lane. Looks like they're opting for the 2v1, actually. Going to be putting Rumble down in the bottom, which is actually a really intelligent decision over on the side of Virgin Gaming, which is the red team in this match. By the way, VGNG right there, Virgin Gaming is that what that stands for, and it's an intelligent move on their part, because they have the Rumble in this matchup, who has the range advantage over Cho'Gath, and the advantage of not having to spend mana. Cho'Gath has inhibitive mana costs early on in the game, and Rumble's going to have a much easier time in the 2v1 lane, and he's still pretty powerful later on in the game, even if he comes out from a lane a little bit behind. Equalizer can really well equalize a team fight, even if you're rather behind, and it works incredibly well with their comp. We got kind of into the action right away there with that invade, and I wanted a little bit of time to talk about the comp, but I guess right now it's a little bit more quiet on the map, so I can go into it some. The Glacial Fissure from Braum, the ulti there from Jinx, the Super Mega Death Rocket, the Cataclysm, all of these circles and lines, and the Equalizer piled on top of that, that is going to be very scary in the later on team fights. And that's something that you really can't shut down. There's a reason why AoE Wombo Combo has been a viable team comp strat since the beginning of time, because CC is powerful, even if somebody's behind in lane. But it looks like we have one of the first ganks of the game here. Rampage coming right into the middle lane, following up with that Q, looking to maybe get enough time chasing here up against Advise to get another charge, but he's running to 2 of his friends because MS Fish was still helping out Helen C in the jungle there, and that is the Ignite going to be dropping LeBlanc to the ground. Zed picking up first blood. Meanwhile, Intertitus is up in the top lane, getting harassed away by ZoMG, a cat, over and over again. Really good Jinx play right here, taking full advantage of Cho'Gath being up a little bit too far. The Rupture does not quite land, but there are just so many people diving this tower, and no damage landed onto Braum, nicely dodging out the silence as well as the Rupture. Gets the execute instead of giving up any gold. Well executed, if I may make a terrible joke. Dive right there from Braum and co, and they're going to harass Rampage as well away from the tower as they force Cho'Gath to use a teleport just to get back into lane here, though it is a little bit of a blessing that he did have that teleport available. He chose to go with that summoner spell rather than the more aggressive Ignite or Exhaust potential options, since it does mean that in this lane, which has turned into a 2v1, he's going to at least be able to get some of the farm. And while Cho'Gath does have kind of inhibitive mana costs, he at least does have his passive to help him out a little bit. The few CS that he's going to be able to get fairly easily under the tower and going to be able to pick up with those spells at long range are going to help him sustain in this lane. In terms of health, and actually in terms of mana. Carnivore, Cho'Gath's passive, whenever a minion is killed, gives a certain amount of health and mana back based on Cho'Gath's level. It's sort of a way that Riot kind of built into the champion to make up for the fact that he has very low mobility. He's fairly squishy in the early game, actually. He becomes quite tanky after he gets some stacks of his ulti up, but he's moderately squishy in the early game, so it's a way for him to survive in otherwise incredibly rough laning phase. But we've talked enough about the top lane and the bottom lane here. We should probably mention the fact that a dragon is happening. That's pretty important. Maybe you should talk about that for a second, Octavian. Vi does manage to smite secure that one. No contest at all. They didn't even know it was happening on the other side, and there's a gank followed up right afterwards. 4-Leaf A coming right back into this game. They had a bit of a setback up in the top side right there. They got the dive and they got invaded into their own jungle, but they managed to pull out the first dragon, and that first dragon buff is probably one of the most valuable ones. The second dragon buff, it's nice. You kill minions faster and you kill monsters faster. It's especially nice as a jungler. It makes the jungle so much easier. It really just takes a burden off the shoulders of a lot of the junglers who can't really compete as well in the newest jungle with all of the incredibly damaging camps. Some of the junglers who get a little bit too beat up by that jungle have a much easier time once they get the second dragon buff. But aside from that, it's not too great unless you're already ahead. The first one is it's just a boost in damage, and not only damage, because it's an AP and AD ratio boost. It's a percentage boost to both your AP and AD. I believe in the most recent patch it was dropped to 6% rather than 8%, which is where it was originally when the buff was first conceptualized. But it's still just a boost over your enemies, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's quite a solid buff. Looks like we have a lane swap back to the way things should be, aside from the fact that it's reversed a little bit. But, oh, Gags is caught out of position, lands the hook onto a cat, trying to solve some time so Animus can show up. But who else has shown up? That is Jarvan. He's going to be getting the knock-up onto Gags. He could not quite land the flay to interrupt it quite in time. Now Animus is on the run, gets some backup in the form of Rampage showing up there in that Vi. And the flash forward for the auto-attack and the Ignite. Can he get it? Advise is burning, and he does fall over. Ionia picks up that kill, while Inventus and Miss Fish duel it out a little bit in the bottom lane. That is a large minion wave right there. Intentus, sorry, not Inventus. Sometimes the names are a little bit difficult to read while the champions are moving around and casting so many spells, everything gets hectic and lost. But I do try and keep them straight. I do try and read them correctly for you guys, but I'm sorry, I'm only human. Rampage up in the top lane, going in with the Assault and Battery, lands some good damage onto Jinx. Just a few more auto attacks from Animus going to bring him down. The shield, though, not actually blocking them because Chicken Frog had it the wrong way, but still the exhaust was well timed and stopped Graves from getting out the damage he needed to bring down Jinx. Meanwhile, down in bottom lane, it is a duel between the Giant and the furry midget in a mech suit, and, well, the furry midget in the mech suit did not quite win this time. Perhaps in the future, but Cho'Gath managed to bully him away from that lane, and he's starting to pick up the CS advantage in the 1v1, which is most likely why the side of Virgin Gaming, pardon me, really wanted to have that lane swap, because as you can see, the lane between Cho'Gath and Rumble goes pretty well in favor of Cho'Gath, especially early on. He can sustain through the Rumble's Flamespitter damage over the minion wave, and he can out-trade him in the 1v1 trades because Silence is such a powerful ability against Rumble. He just relies so incredibly heavily on his abilities. A long-term silence, such as the kind that Cho'Gath has, if he chooses to max Feral Scream first, can really shut Rumble down in a 1v1 duel. Just hit him with the silence first, land the knock-up while he's wandering around with his tail between his legs and his head cut off because he can't do anything at all while he's silenced, and then wander away once the silence wears off and get out of range before he can cast any of his spells back on you. So, a lane that goes quite in favor of the Void Beast. But they did get the lane swap early on, so it's probably not going to be quite as bad, especially considering that Rumble has those 2 assists. But up in the top lane, the hook not quite landing. It hits onto a minion, but it doesn't really matter. They have enough damage to bring Jinx down anyways. There's the stun going to be landing just as the box drops to try and peel for Animus. Very nice flay landing onto 2. Glacial Fissure, though, going to be slowing up Graves enough that Jarvan can finish off the kill, flag and drag over the wall to escape that last bit of damage from Gags that might have brought him down, while Chicken Frog and Gags are in a support fight for the ages. The stun does land and he leaps away to a minion, keeps himself alive. And Gags, despite keeping himself fairly healthy during that fight, did not quite have the peel to save his friend Graves. But they did trade 1-for-1 there, both AD carries falling despite the best efforts of both supports. But there's the equalizer dropped onto the ground. Only a tiny bit of the slow affects Gags. There's a little bit of a miscalculation there from Rumble. Dropped it on the slightly wrong angle, though to be fair, if he had dropped it in the other direction, Gags could have just run up instead of down. So perhaps just a ill-fated Rumble ulti overall coming out from Mistfish. But hey, we all make mistakes sometimes. Not really going to hold it against him. He's been having a decent game so far. He's only a tiny little bit behind in terms of CS. Nice knock-up landing over the wall from Intentus. Doesn't follow it up. And there's Animus going in with the Yumu's Ghostblade Graves build. That one is interesting. I did not notice that, but it's a very interesting pickup to go with that on Graves. A lot of Graves players nowadays will rush the Infinity Edge. It's kind of become the standard on a ton of AD carries, actually. As we see, it looks like Jinx could be going for that. It's got the pieces of a Static Shiv, got half a Static Shiv, and got a third of an Infinity Edge, so really could be going either one of those directions. Could even be going for a Bloodthirster or maybe an Essence Reaver, but that would be a bit of a stretch. Nice damage onto Animus, gets brought down by about a third, but Chicken Frog gets hooked in, gets snared up as well. He's going down very quickly. Ionia has finished off that kill, but Rampage is in trouble now. Advise is going right into the back lines to finish off that kill onto the enemy jungler, while Graves takes a final shuriken to the back and retreats with barely any of his health left. 1-for-1 trade. Support for jungler, I'd actually have to say that is going to be going pretty heavily in favor of Virgin Gaming, because in terms of gold, it was still just a 1-for-1 trade, but that jungler is down, and Dragon is up right now, so a play could potentially be made. They could try and go for it, though Vi did just respawn. Advise getting hooked in as Animus dashes in, as Yumu's Ghostblade is back up, but very nice! Jinx ulti going to be finishing off the double kill. ZoMG Cat picks that one up as Ionia finally finishes off Zed and then runs away. Now, once again, ZoMG Cat playing some wonderful Jinx right here, just not being afraid of the giant void monster in front of him, chasing him down with auto attack after auto attack, and just from a little bit of mispositioning on the part of that Cho'Gath right there, ZoMG Cat was able to bring him down to about a third of his hit points just with relentless minigun shots and a few rockets. And speaking of the dragon, which I did mention earlier, looks like it's going to be started off. Rampage is back alive, though, and he's going to drop a pink ward over the wall, so he sees roughly where the dragon is. He's charging up his Q, but he gets stopped! He gets stopped in place by the Flame Chompers, while his friendly Cho'Gath flashes over the wall, tries to go for the Feast Steal, but doesn't quite get it. Got CC'd up too much before he could bring it down. Well secured by the side of Virgin Gaming on that one. Very well played dragon fight. Really good Flame Chompers, too, over the wall from Cat. As it looks like Gags and Rampage might be going for the crab here. No, it looks like they're going for the ward. Controlling sight with either one of those. Actually pulled away by the Lantern just before. And there's the equalizer dropped onto Gags pretty much alone. He dodges around it, though, and gets slowed for only a few seconds. There's the flash force from Mistfish, but Rampage, you're going way too deep. He goes down before he can make anything really happen with that Vi ulti, as Ionia is in a lot of trouble here. Dodges away from the Flame Chompers, but the Braum damage is real. Finishes off the kill with a Winter's Bite. It was a very harsh bite right there. Did a lot of damage. Braum's Q actually does, for those of you who do not know, which may be some of you, I don't know, Braum is still a relatively new champion compared to some of them. To me, Vi is still a new champion. I'm an old fogey, I'm sorry about that. Mistfish getting pulled back into the box. This very well might be the end for Rumble. Yes, he goes down to Intertitus right there. I think I got that name right that time, Intertitus. Ooh. Predicting the hook there from Advise, nicely done. Tosses back a Shadow and a Shuriken as well, just to show Gags that he can do some damage too. Well, Chicken Frog and Cat are down in the bottom lane killing off a tower. That is a fun combo of names to say. Chicken Frog and Cat. Yeah, killing a tower down there by themselves. The dynamic duo in the bottom lane. But, yes, I was saying about Braum's Q. The reason why it did a surprising amount of damage right there is because Braum has quite a chunk of hit points. And we just saw him complete the face of the mountain, so he's got even more under his belt. And that does scale, I believe, as a percentage of his hit points. It does extra damage. So the more healthy the Braum is, the less healthy you become if you are facing off against him and you fail to dodge out after his Qs are fired, so either sidestep nicely or keep the Braum from buying too much health, because he can actually do a surprising amount of damage at around 10 to 20 minutes into the game, which is, we're smack dab in the middle of that, so maybe Ionia got a little bit surprised by that Braum Q. Didn't really have anywhere to dodge, though, because of some rather well-placed Flame Chompers on the side of Cat, but I'm going to stop harping upon that single Braum Q, since you're probably well aware of it at this point. Chicken Frog and Advise in the middle lane, clearing out some minions. Exciting work as a flag is dropped to help them along, give them the moral support they need to kill off those minions, stab them with shurikens or knives or whatever it is that Advise uses for his melee auto attacks. I think it's his knives. Yeah, it's those sword things that come out of his gauntlets. They're very, very cool. And it looks like we might have a little bit of an impromptu ARAM in the mid lane. Always a nice thing to have in the middle of a game. Anywhere between 15 and 25 minutes, you might see one of these form in one of your own ranked games. It's an interesting natural phenomena of the Summoner's Rift. It happens in, I would say, about half of the games that I cast and or play. Around 15 to 25 minutes in the game, somewhere in that 10-minute mark, you get 4 to 5 people from both teams just joining forces in the middle lane against each other, and Miss Fish brings down Ionia just in time to save ZOMG. A Cat runs away at hyper speeds to get back to the tower and head on back to base. Oof, that was a close call for Jinx right there, but luckily had a Rumble nearby to help him out, and that was valiant effort, Gags. He tried to do the land the hook, toss the lantern back, and then bring him and a surprise friend over the wall to the enemy, but he's going to settle for flaying Advise after he swaps to his shadow, landing the hook onto him, getting ulted as well, dropping the exhaust and just doing everything he can to shut this Zed's day down, but he did not account for any of the rest of the team, and that AoE wombo combo is way too much. Rumble brings down Cho'Gath as the Jinx ulti flies right on through the middle of everything with, it could have been a lot more disastrous. That bomb could have exploded, but thankfully it did not. There's the chain landing, but Ionia doesn't really have a good opening to go in right now, especially considering that Chicken Frog did a nice job of blocking out his sigil with that unbreakable shield of his. So he's just going to be landing some poke, actually gets some good damage onto Chicken Frog and brings him down, pays with his life for it though. The flag marking his grave right there at the LeBlanc's feet. Whew, this has been a little bit of a hectic game so far. Dragon's going to be respawning in about a minute. That's probably going to be a spot of contention right there as Hellenic, I don't know whether to say Hellenic X or Hellenics. I'm going to go with Hellenics. I like that better. Is roaming through the jungle along with ZOMG, a Cat, and they find Inventus poking his head out a little bit too far into that lane. MS Fish is on a killing spree as a few more rockets fly after Gags just to show him who's boss in these here parts. Nice hook. Going to be stopping Hellenics up in his path from chasing after Rampage. As ZOMG, a Cat, pushes up the lane. Doesn't really have anybody who can stop this Jinx. I mean, generally you don't want to send your solo AD carry who doesn't have any really proper escapes off to split push all by herself because of things like LeBlanc on the enemy team, but if they know where LeBlanc is, basically, if they know where the LeBlanc is, they can have Jinx wherever they want. Because LeBlanc is right now sitting at 6-5-1, the only threat on the other side of the board. Graves is certainly doing well. Sorry about that. Dropped a pen. Graves is certainly doing quite well for himself. In terms of CS, he has the second highest on the board, and he's got a decent KDA. 2, 3, and 4 is respectable. But LeBlanc's the only one who can really deal with Jinx at this point. Graves, I don't think he could manage the 1v1, mainly because of the way that he's built. He's built for really bursty all-at-once sort of fight, and I really don't think that right now his burst is enough to bring Jinx down. I just don't think that he quite has the AD to do it. But Intertitus might be in a little bit of a pickle here. MS Fish looking to flank around onto him, push him up against that wall, and force him into a bad spot. But Gags is waiting the bush. He lands the hook, flashes away over the rupture, just gets away without getting CC chained and then killed. That was a little bit of a close one for MS Fish. Looks like the entirety of Virgin Gaming is going to be sitting down here in the bottom lane, pushing up the minion wave. They can take those out very, very swiftly. And once they get to the turret, if they can get Jinx in minigun form, right-clicking onto that construction, that big blue construction right there, then it's going to be toppling over very, very swiftly. Hook not quite connecting as the Zap flies back and does pretty much the same. And looks like we're going to have a little bit of a vision war here from both sides. Yeah, they both drop a ward to that bush. That bush is very, very much seen, though actually they're going to be clearing it out as a Rupture goes over the wall to try and check. Rupture actually does give vision as well, which is quite nice. And there's the blue trinket used, spotting them out before they walk into that bush. Looking to set up an ambush, but they can't really pull it off. They're just going to go right for the fight here. Equalizer dropped onto multiple members of the enemy team. There is Cho'Gath going to be falling over first. He's the one with the least methods of getting out of the fight. He's really tanky, and if he gets ahead, he can be a huge menace in the middle of a fight, but from behind, it's really difficult to play a Cho'Gath because he relies so much on just being able to survive in the middle of the enemy team. But there is Zed going right into the back line. Animus forced to flash away from the Cataclysm, tosses back his ult. He gets all of his burst out, but he goes down in the process, not bringing anybody with him. That was what I was talking about. This Graves just does not have enough AD quite yet. Advise going to spam a few taunts at the bottom of the enemy steps, and then wander away back into the jungle, maybe looking to try and set up some form of ambush. He's a little bit low on health for that, so just gonna steal away a few jungle camps if they can. That red buff is up, may as well give it over to the Zed, and hey, here's an undefended tower with a few of our minion waves next to it. Let's make it go away, and they certainly do very, very quickly. Jinx is quite good at tower liquidation, as you might call it. Advise finds a blue buff, wants a blue buff, probably going to take a blue buff. He's a little bit low on health, so perhaps we'll see Humiliation show up on the screen at some point, though actually that was taken out of the game a long time ago. I don't know, maybe they wanted to make players not feel quite as bad when they died to the jungle, but I think if you die to a jungle monster, you kind of deserve someone shouting Humiliation at you. Maybe I'm a little bit too harsh. MS Fish splits pushing up in the top lane. Ionia going in for the fight, but MS Fish is doing so much damage right now. That was incredible. I mean, he did have about 2 minion waves worth of minions pounding onto the LeBlanc as well, and LeBlanc is not exactly renowned for her tankiness, but still, that was like 2 ticks worth of Flame Spitter and some Liandry's damage, and it got pretty intense in that fire. It was pretty dang hot. Ionia got burned down to, well, the health that you can see Ionia at right now, so looks like when the Yordles go up against Ionia, the Yordles win. That's the downside of having a name like Ionia's. Every time you play a fight, every time you play a match, you're fighting for an entire nation's pride right there. That's a lot of pressure. I wouldn't want to be under that pressure every time I go and play League. But looks like there might be a little bit of a Dragon or Baron dance. The Dragon isn't back up for a while. It would be interesting to see a Baron dance. This is the point in the game where we're getting to it, and that is something which 4LA here could use to get back into this game, potentially. They have a lot of steal potential. If they have the Cho'Gath with the flash up, which right now he doesn't, but he'll have it back up in a little while if I'm looking at the timer correctly. It looks like it's about a quarter of the cooldown remaining on that spell. So, ooh, there's the Zed ult going right into the back lines. Ionia forced to dash away. Can't use any of his spells aggressively so far. The Zed ult pops and does a bunch of damage. Graves manages to finish off Zed as he tries to swap back to his Shadow, but Rampage is way too deep in the back lines. Double kill so far for ZOMG Cat. The Flame Chomper is going to be catching that Cho'Gath right out of position as Gags is the last one left. The crits are doing a lot of work. He's forced to flash away, but the red buff is still on him. Flash forward from ZOMG Cat. Wants this quadra kill. Gets this quadra kill. It's at the price of Braum's life, but he is gladly going to sacrifice himself for the quadra right there. And the inhibitor turret, why not? The inhibitor as well. They've got a Jinx with full stacks on her Gatling gun. That is going to be a lot of attack speed. Bringing out the bullets really, really quick. Pretty decisive fight right there. Showing just how powerful their engage potential is over here on the side of VGNG. They can pick a fight from miles away. They just had Zed jump to the back lines and swap immediately out. He didn't actually really do that much, but he caused havoc in the back lines of the enemy team. He caused panic, he caused chaos, he caused confusion. He made them think a fight was happening. Oh no, we have to form up, we have to use all of our defenses right now, and then he swapped away, and then a few seconds later they really did engage the team fight. They dropped the equalizers. They threw in the Jinx ulti. They gave them a Cataclysm to fight within, and it was, well, cataclysmic. So good team fight right there. Good synergy between the players as well. They timed everything quite well around each other's team play ability. The fact that the Zed is such a threat to the back line, they managed to use that very, very nicely. And speaking of Zed, Advise is doing some fancy footwork right there, dodging around a lot of CCs that could have caused him some problems. So well done there as the Dragon respawns. VGNG in good position for this one. They've got some vision on it, though the other side does as well. They're dropping wards in the back of the pit. They're dropping blue trinkets over the wall onto the Dragon. They really do not want to give this up, which is... It's certainly a legitimate worry for them. Dragon has become much more powerful recently, and it's become especially powerful on teams that are ahead, since so many of the buffs have to do with pushing. It makes it much, much harder to fight a team that's already ahead of you when they have the Dragon buff. Equalizer dropped. Looks like they're going for another fight here. The Flag and Drag does not quite land on anybody, but Intentius is forced to flash away already, as is Ionia over the wall. But Cat is legendary at this point, tossing out the Jinx ult. He gets pulled away from it, Vi does, so at least that doesn't land, and it's only a 1-4-0 trade, but it completely forces them away from the Dragon. They no longer have Flash on the Cho'Gath. They cannot rely on the Feast Steal, because he's not going to be able to get anywhere near that without having his Flash up, certainly not near enough to use his ulti. And it looks like the side of VGNG are going to be going for a Baron pickup. Virgin Gaming could certainly benefit from getting the Baron. What I was talking about with the Dragon, where it's much more powerful if you're already ahead, applies, if anything, 2- or 3-fold to the Baron buff, which just, it no longer gives any stat boosts, but it makes pushing so much easier. You get those huge purpley minions of death. Seriously, a modified super minion like that one that you just saw on your screen there, that thing is the size of most champions. It's scary. I saw in one game a super minion that had been modified by the Baron buff and buffed by a Banner of Command. It was as large as, I don't know, half as large as a Cho'Gath at full stacks. It was terrifying. But there's the engage right onto Ionia, pulled away by the Thresh Lantern, might be able to survive, has 3 stacks of concussive blows and nobody's proccing the 4th. Vi turns around to try and save her team, goes for the heroic sacrifice, and, well, got the sacrifice part of it, but we have yet to see whether it'll be truly heroic. Zhonya's to dodge out the ignite from Miss Fish, and the Golden Walking Rumble manages to avoid the last few ticks of damage that would have spelled his doom. Again, 2-for-0 trade, 1-for-0 trade right there. Not a incredibly oppressive fight, but they are winning by these small chipping victories. There's one fight so far. That one that was engaged by the Zed ult to the back line towards the middle of the map there, coming out of the bush on the side of the river. That one fight was the most decisive fight of the game so far. That got them the inhibitor here, and got them enough of a lead that these next 2 chipping fights that we've seen, the next 2 fights that have just taken small advantages, have given them the Baron and have given them map control. They have so much vision control in the enemy jungle right now, and the enemy has not a single ward on the map except for one just outside of their own base right there. So they have a single ward, 1 ward on the map, as compared to the 6 or 5, which are coming out from Team Virgin Gaming, which admittedly isn't the most wards I've ever seen on a map, not exactly lighting it up like a Christmas tree, but it's giving them good enough vision in the areas where they need it that they can operate on the rest of the map in total confidence. They know they're not over here, so they can just walk over here on this part of the map and assume that they're going to be safe. It's a matter of inference as much as it is direct knowledge. Gag's tossing out the hook, trying to get it onto Hellenix, but doesn't quite land it and has wasted a lot of wards in that one spot. The Raptor buff lasts for a while, and they've got a few red trinkets as well, so I don't see any way that a ward's going to be surviving there, not if you see it dropped. Speaking of dropped, Ionia's health bar did just that. Oh, doesn't quite get the shadow over the wall. A little bit of a misstep there from Advise across the side. The wall a little bit too thick for shadows to cross. And looks like Zhonja Cat is just going to be taking this turret down. It's already below half health, and he is Jinx with a minigun, so that is going to be falling as the Equalizer is dropped. More to dissuade the enemy team than anything else. Doesn't really start a proper team fight with that one, which actually could be a big deal. This could be maybe the opening that they need, but Advise is aggressively positioning with that Zed, really threatening the backline of the other side. If he gets right in onto Animus or onto Ionia, he can really make one of them just explode incredibly quickly. So both of the carries on the other side have to be terrified of this one assassin that's always going to be looking to try and come to get them. And if they are forced to back away and use all of their stuff, all their abilities and all of their potential defensively, then the rest of the team, aside from the Zed over on the side of Virgin Gaming, is going to be able to wombo combo out in that 4v4, because if they just trade Zed for one of the carries, they're fine with that, because their team is much better at the wombo combo and is probably farther ahead at this point, and Ionia is getting hit up by the Deathmark, swaps back away just as the silence hits from Cho'Gath. Doesn't really need to bring Ionia down, just needs to keep him out of the fight. He's going to flash forward with the Youmuu's Ghostblade running as well, doing some good damage, as Cat is legendary off to the side there. Does finally fall to the LeBlanc damage, as well as some damage from the laser that tower is firing out, as Rumble is forced to flash away after the Vial holds him up in place a little bit longer than he'd like. Finally, Cat gets shut down by LeBlanc. Ionia is doing some work here to try and pull his team back into the game, but I don't know if it's going to be enough, because that is another inhibitor turret falling, and this inhibitor is going down as well. Ionia, 3 stacks of concussive blows. They can't quite get in range for the 4th auto attack. Dude, as I said, Chicken Frog's damage is surprising on the Braum. Look at that health right there. That is a Giant's Belts on top of all those other health items. That is a lot of damage that his Q is going to be doing. It's surprising. You got to watch out for it. MS Fish getting hooked back in. Shutdown gold going on over to Graves. That is a nice place to have it as a flash away from Braum to avoid the knockup. But that is 2 inhibitor towers down, 1 inhibitor down, and Baron buff still on a few members of the enemy team. Not to mention the dragon buffs. Those are something which you should always be watching out for, because they stack up and they're sitting there in the background, and 4LA has not managed to pick up any more dragons but that first one that they grabbed. So at least they have the first one, which means that the 6% buff is on both teams right now. So that at least is evened out. There's no solid advantage on either side from that. Though, to be fair, having a percentage buff is more of an advantage for a team that has more already. The more AD you have, the more AD is given to you by a 6% bonus. So the team that can build more AD, i.e. the team which is ahead in gold, which is the side of Virgin Gaming right now, gets more of a benefit from the secondary dragon buff. So I suppose it is actually benefiting Virgin Gaming more than it is benefiting Team 4LA, but it's not really a bad thing for them to have it. They need every advantage they can have at this point. They need every tiny little scrap of advantage that they can pull their way back into this game with, because if they lose probably just like 1, maybe 2 more big fights, I would say that that is going to lose them the game. Chicken Frog playing the big defensive buff Braum. He's got that elixir of iron at this point. He is giant. It actually increases the size of the shield, but we have a fight going on. Cataclysm and Equalizer dropped in the same place. That is a gruesome way to die right there, as Ionia dashes away with barely any of his health left. He nearly goes down with the zap as well, but he's the last one left standing on his team. Oh, actually, no. Graves did manage to survive the fight as well. So the 2 carries are alive, but they've got no backline or front line to help them out. Animus going to be falling as MS Fish brings him down right next to his base. Ionia now sitting in his base is actually still taking some decent damage from the Rumble. Oof, those Electro Harpoons kind of hurt a lot. And that is the Nexus under fire as Rumble makes a nice pretty statue at the bottom of the enemy team's stairs for them to look at. Taunts a bunch as well. There's the ace picking up the kill on the fountain. Ultimate disrespect from MS Fish. And that's going to be the game going over to the side of Virgin Gaming. Well played, guys. Well played, everyone. Rumble, you can walk away scot-free because the game is over. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you all tomorrow. Hey guys, if you liked the video, there's a lot more on the channel, so you can go check them out if you want to, and there's going to be a lot more coming out, so hitting the subscribe button will let you know when those are going to be happening. I will be around for a long, long time to come. Thank you for watching. My name's Octavian. I'll see you tomorrow.